I never thought I'd be telling my kids to eat less, so the food would last longer. Sarah's voice cracked as she shared her story with an unexpected listener, Barron Trump. The gas station's harsh fluorescent lights illuminated the tears in her eyes, highlighting her worn appearance. What happened next left Sarah speechless. Barron's response to her plight was far from ordinary. As they stood there, surrounded by the hum of refrigerators and distant traffic, something extraordinary unfolded. How did this chance meeting transform Sarah's life? And what can it teach us about compassion in the most unlikely places? The fluorescent lights of the gas station flickered, casting an eerie glow on Sarah's tired face. She stood at the pump, her hand trembling as she reached into her pocket. The loose change clinked softly, a stark reminder of her dire financial situation. Sarah's eyes darted between the gas gauge hovering dangerously close to empty and the meager handful of coins in her palm. The acrid smell of gasoline mingled with the crisp night air. In the distance, the hum of passing cars on the highway seemed to mock her predicament. Sarah's shoulders sagged under the weight of her worries. Unpaid bills, an empty fridge, and her children's disappointed faces all swirled in her mind. Her daughter's small voice echoed in her memory. "Mommy, why can't we have cereal for breakfast anymore?" The innocent question had felt like a dagger to Sarah's heart. She had fumbled for an explanation, trying to shield her children from the harsh realities of their situation. Now, standing in the harsh glare of the gas station lights, Sarah felt paralyzed by indecision. Should she swallow her pride and ask for help, or risk running out of gas on the lonely stretch of road ahead? The battle raged within her, pride warring against the desperate needs of her children. As Sarah stood frozen, the low purr of an expensive engine cut through the quiet night. A sleek black car with tinted windows pulled into the station, drawing Sarah's attention despite herself. The car door opened, and a tall, lanky figure stepped out. Sarah's heart skipped a beat as recognition dawned. Barron Trump, son of the former president, stood mere feet away from her. Sarah's pulse quickened, her mind racing with possibilities. Here was someone who had never known want, someone whose life was the antithesis of her own struggles. The contrast was jarring, almost painful. Yet a small spark of hope flickered to life in her chest. She watched as Barron moved towards the convenience store, his long strides confident and purposeful. Sarah's feet felt rooted to the ground, her body paralyzed by indecision. Should she approach him? What would she even say? As Barron disappeared into the store, Sarah felt a surge of desperation. This might be her only chance, a lifeline thrown to her in the depths of her despair. With a deep breath, Sarah steeled herself. She would approach Barron when he emerged from the store. She would swallow her pride, face her fears, and take this chance, for her children, for their future. The minutes ticked by slowly, each second stretching into an eternity. Sarah's palms grew sweaty, her breathing shallow. She watched the store entrance with an intensity born of desperation, knowing that her next actions could change the course of her family's life. The harsh, fluorescent lights of the gas station cast long shadows across the lot, blurring the lines between worlds that rarely intersect. Barron Trump stood at the pump, his tall frame relaxed as he filled the tank of a sleek black SUV. His casual demeanor contrasted sharply with the nervous energy radiating from Sarah, who stood a few feet away, her heart pounding in her chest. Sarah took a deep breath and forced herself to move. Each step felt like a monumental effort as she approached the former president's son. "Excuse me, Mr. Trump." Sarah's voice quivered, barely audible above the hum of the gas pump. Barron turned, his expression unreadable as he took in Sarah's disheveled appearance. His striking blue eyes met hers, holding wisdom beyond his years. I'm sorry to bother you, but my kids." Sarah trailed off, her gaze falling to the cracked pavement beneath her feet. To her surprise, Barron's voice was soft, almost gentle when he spoke. "Take a breath," he said, his tone free of judgment. "Tell me what's going on." Sarah found herself pouring out her story to this unexpected listener. His words caught Sarah off guard. She blinked rapidly, fighting back tears of relief and gratitude. For the first time in months, she felt seen, truly seen as a person rather than a problem. "Tell me more about your kids," Barron prompted gently, leaning against his car. "What are their names?" As Sarah shared stories of her children, their dreams, their struggles, their unwavering optimism, she noticed a change in Barron's demeanor. The initial wariness in his eyes softened, replaced by something that looked remarkably like empathy. "You know," Barron said after a moment, "I may have grown up in a different world, but I understand the weight of expectations and judgments. It's not easy being in the public eye, always wondering if people see you, or just what they think you represent." Sarah nodded, surprised by the vulnerability in his admission. In that moment, the divide between them didn't seem so vast. They were just two people, each carrying their own burdens, finding an unexpected connection in the unlikeliest of places. Sarah's words tumbled out, a torrent of apology and raw desperation. The weight of her vulnerability hung heavy in the air as she stood before Barron Trump. She explained about her two jobs, her voice wavering as she described the grueling hours and meager pay. The rising costs of everything had turned her careful budgeting into a constant scramble. "I never thought I'd be in this position," Sarah admitted, her eyes fixed on a point just past Barron's shoulder. "I used to have savings, but now—" She trailed off, shaking her head. Barron's expression shifted, a mix of concern and something Sarah couldn't quite place. "How are your children coping?" he asked, his voice gentle. Sarah's voice cracked as she replied, "They're amazing. So strong. But She paused, swallowing hard. "I'm considering skipping meals to make sure they have enough to eat. What kind of mother does that make me?" The admission hung between them, stark and painful. Sarah felt exposed, like a delicate flower trying to bloom in the harsh light of a gas station parking lot. She braced herself for judgment, but Barron's eyes held none. Instead, he asked questions, genuinely trying to understand her situation. As Sarah answered, explaining her jobs as a waitress and part-time office cleaner, she felt a strange relief washing over her. The act of sharing her burden lifted a weight she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. "I had dreams," Sarah found herself saying, surprised by her own candor. "I wanted to go back to school, get my degree in social work, help other families who are struggling." She let out a bitter laugh. "Seems impossibly far away now." Barron listened intently, his presence oddly comforting in the harsh gas station light. Sarah noticed the way he leaned in slightly, his brow furrowed in concentration as he absorbed her words. As she spoke, Sarah realized she was sharing things she'd never voiced aloud before: the shame of using her children's piggy bank money to buy milk, the ache of telling her daughter they couldn't afford new shoes for school. "The hardest part," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper, "is maintaining hope, believing that things will get better. Some days it feels like I'm trying to climb a mountain with my hands tied behind my back." The realization of her openness hit her suddenly. She had just laid bare the most vulnerable parts of her life to Barron Trump, son of a former president, a young man whose world was so far removed from her own. Sarah tensed, bracing herself for his response, for the moment when the gulf between their experiences would become painfully clear. As the silence stretched between them, Barron's eyes met Sarah's. There was a depth of understanding in his gaze that caught her off guard, a flicker of empathy that seemed to bridge the vast chasm between their worlds. Sarah held her breath, her heart pounding in her chest as she waited for his response. Barron's voice when it came, was low and measured. "Sarah, I want you to know that I hear you, really hear you." He paused, his blue eyes intense. "People often assume I can't understand struggle, but we all face challenges in different ways." He shared a story about volunteering at a local shelter, focusing on a single father working 3 jobs to keep his family afloat. His determination, his refusal to give up. "It changed me," Barron admitted, a hint of vulnerability in his tone. As he spoke, Sarah felt the late-night chill of the gas station fade away, replaced by a warmth that seemed to emanate from the connection forming between them. She found herself nodding, recognizing echoes of her own struggles and triumphs. "What you're doing for your children, Sarah," Barron said, his voice filled with admiration. "It takes incredible strength. You should be proud." His words washed over her like a soothing balm, easing the weight of shame and self-doubt she'd carried for so long. For a moment, Sarah forgot about the empty gas tank, the looming bills, and the gnawing hunger. Barron leaned in slightly, his voice lowering. "I want to help, Sarah. Not just tonight, but in a way that could make a real difference." He explained about a nonprofit organization he was connected with, one that specialized in helping single parents rebuild their lives. They offer job training, childcare assistance, and even scholarships for continuing education. The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Sarah processed his words. This wasn't just a temporary fix, but a potential lifeline that could change the trajectory of her entire family's future. Barron pressed a business card into her trembling hand. "I'll call the director myself in the morning," he promised. "And don't worry about the gas, I'll take care of that now." As he turned to head back to the pump, Sarah found her voice at last. "Why?" she managed to ask, her tone a mix of gratitude and lingering disbelief. Barron paused, looking back at her with a gentle smile. "Because we're all in this together, Sarah. And sometimes, all it takes is one person believing in you to change everything." Barron's words hung in the air, a promise of hope. But what came next would prove that actions speak louder than even the most heartfelt sentiments. As he reached for his phone, Sarah couldn't have imagined how the next few minutes would alter the course of her life forever. With swift, purposeful movements, Barron dialed a number. Sarah watched, her breath caught in her throat as he spoke in hushed tones. She caught fragments of the conversation. Opportunity, support, immediate assistance. Each word sent a jolt of electricity through her, a spark of possibility she hadn't dared to feel in months. As the call ended, Barron's blue eyes met Sarah's, filled with warmth that seemed to chase away the chill of the night. "Sarah, I've just spoken with Jessica Moore, director of the Bright Futures Foundation. They specialize in helping single parents like yourself get back on their feet." Sarah's mouth fell open, but no words came out. The enormity of what was happening began to sink in, and she felt her knees go weak. Barron continued, his voice steady and reassuring. "They're setting you up with a financial counselor to help manage your situation and plan for the future. The foundation offers scholarships for continuing education and a job placement program for stable employment while you study." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes, blurring her vision. She blinked rapidly, not wanting to miss a single moment of this miraculous encounter. "There's more," Barron said softly. "They have a childcare assistance program for after-school care, giving you time to focus on your studies and work." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a sob. The weight that had been pressing down on her for so long began to lift, replaced by a lightness she had almost forgotten existed. Barron reached out, gently squeezing her shoulder. "Jessica wants to meet with you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. to go over all the details and start putting together a plan tailored for you and your family." Sarah's mind raced, trying to process it all. Just an hour ago, she had been standing here, out of gas and out of hope. Now, suddenly, the future she had dreamed of seemed within grasp. I "I don't know what to say," Sarah whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Barron shook his head, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "You don't need to thank me, Sarah. This is what community is all about. We lift each other up when we're down." He handed her a business card with an address and some money. "This is where you'll meet Jessica tomorrow, and this is for gas and groceries to tide you over until then." Sarah's fingers trembled as she took the card and the money. It wasn't just the financial help, though, that was desperately needed. It was the validation, the acknowledgement of her struggles, and the hand-up she had been praying for. As Sarah watched Barron fill her tank, the reality of the moment washed over her. The gentle hum of the pump faded into the background as her mind raced with thoughts of her children. She could almost see their faces light up when she shared the news of this unexpected blessing. A kaleidoscope of emotions swirled within her: gratitude, disbelief, and a glimmer of hope she hadn't felt in months. The weight pressing down on her shoulders began to lift, if only slightly. As Barron finished, Sarah struggled to find the right words. I don't know how to thank you," she finally managed, her voice thick with emotion. "This means more than you could ever know." Barron turned to her, his expression softening. "You don't need to thank me, Sarah. I was just doing what's right. Sometimes all it takes is one person to extend a hand to make a difference." His words hung in the air, and Sarah felt a shift in her perspective. This wasn't just about a full tank of gas or the promise of help. It was about human connection, about seeing and being seen in a world that often felt cold and indifferent. Sarah nodded, a lump forming in her throat. She thought about all the times she had felt invisible, struggling silently. And now, in this unlikely encounter, she felt truly seen for the first time in years. As the realization dawned on her, Sarah's mind raced ahead. This moment would change her life and her children's lives. The opportunity to go back to school, find stable employment, provide for her kids without constant fear. It all seemed within reach now. Standing in the fluorescent glow of the gas station lights, Sarah made a silent vow to pay this kindness forward when she was back on her feet. Barron glanced at his watch. "I should get going," he said. "But remember, you have that meeting with Jessica tomorrow. This is just the beginning, Sarah. You've got this." As he prepared to leave, Sarah felt a renewed sense of determination. The gas station, once a place of desperation, now felt like the starting point of a new chapter. She watched as Barron walked towards his car, illuminated by the harsh lights. Before he got in, he turned back with a small smile and a nod. It was a simple gesture, but it carried the weight of everything that had transpired, igniting a spark of hope that Sarah knew would guide her forward. As Barron's taillights faded into the distance, Sarah stood rooted to the spot, her mind reeling. The gas station's harsh fluorescent lights cast long shadows across the empty lot. But for Sarah, the world suddenly seemed brighter. She marveled at the unexpected turn her evening had taken, all because she found the courage to reach out to a stranger. Sarah's gaze drifted to the spot where Barron had stood moments ago. A wave of gratitude washed over her, mingled with a profound realization. Appearances and assumptions could be incredibly deceiving. Here was Barron Trump, heir to a name that carried both power and controversy. Yet he had shown her more kindness and empathy than she had experienced in years. Sarah's perception of the world around her began to shift, like a prism refracting light into new and unexpected colors. She thought about the countless people she encountered every day, at her waitressing job, on the bus, at her children's school. How many hidden allies might be waiting, ready to lend a hand if only someone asked. She made a silent vow. From this moment on, she would be more open, both to asking for help and offering it to others. The world suddenly felt less isolating, less cruel. It was as if she had been given a new pair of glasses, allowing her to see the potential for human connection in every interaction. As she walked back to her car, Sarah felt as if she were carrying more than just a full tank of gas and the promise of a brighter future. She carried a new perspective, a lens through which to view the world and its inhabitants. This unremarkable gas station had transformed into a crossroads of hope and new beginnings. As she pulled out of the gas station, Sarah felt a renewed connection to the world around her. The streetlights no longer seemed cold and impersonal, but rather like beacons of warmth, each one representing a life, a story, a potential connection. She thought about the people in the houses she passed, wondering about their dreams, their struggles, their moments of unexpected kindness. Sarah's mind drifted to her children, asleep at home. She imagined the stories she would tell them, not just about the financial help they had received, but about the importance of reaching out, of seeing beyond appearances, of the transformative power of compassion. She hoped to instill in them the lesson she had learned tonight, that humanity, in all its complexity and beauty, could be found in the most unlikely places. As she neared her neighborhood, Sarah felt a surge of determination. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she would face them with a renewed spirit. She would attend the meeting with Jessica Moore at the Bright Futures Foundation, not just as a recipient of help, but as someone eager to learn how she, too, could make a difference in others' lives. As the sun rose over the gas station, Sarah reflected on her transformative encounter with Barron Trump. The night's events had shattered her preconceptions, revealing unexpected kindness in desperate moments. Her story reminds us that compassion transcends boundaries, challenging us to see potential for kindness everywhere. Preparing to meet Jessica Moore at the Bright Futures Foundation, Sarah felt renewed purpose. Her journey from isolation to connection invites us all to consider: how might our lives change if we approached each day open to unexpected kindness? Let Sarah's courage inspire you to reach out to someone in need today. What small act of compassion could you offer that might change a life?